Hi guys, and welcome to Sleep Lab. I hope your day has been kind to you. And if it hasn't, that's alright, because for now, your mind can finally take a moment to rest. Before we begin, close your eyes and imagine the gentle rain falling just outside. The steady sound of the droplets will help you relax and make it easier to listen. Tonight, we're going to step into an ancient tale, a story about the mysterious birth of the pyramids, told from a perspective far different from the history you know. Take a deep breath. And whenever you're ready, let's begin. The late afternoon sun was sinking toward the distant edge of sand, dyeing the desert a deep crimson like cooling embers. Wind swept across the harsh, dry dunes, carrying with it the lingering heat of an entire long day. On the narrow path leading toward the Nile, Khalem walked in silence through the vast open space, his eyes following the quiet fields like wounds that would never heal. This year, the Nile did not rise. Its waters receded strangely, leaving behind a riverbed laid bare with stone. For the ancient Egyptians, this was no different from a death sentence. No water meant no harvest, no life. Farmers looked to the sky in despair, and the priests offered more prayers than ever. Yet the heavens remained silent, as if turning their back on mankind. Khalem stopped at a small mound of earth, once the place where he used to read with his old teacher. He gazed up at the pale violet sky, searching in the wind for a sign, an answer, anything to help him understand why the world had suddenly gone wrong. But the wind only hissed past his ears, dry and cold. Then, in a moment, when the wind shifted, Khalem heard a faint whisper. Not human, not animal, it seemed to rise from beneath the ground itself, like the breath of the desert calling his name. Build a path that reaches the sky. Khalem jerked upright, heart pounding. He spun around, but saw no one. Only the spreading darkness, and the sand crawling under the dying sunset. A shiver ran down his spine. He did not know whether it was an illusion, or a message from something older than any pyramid that had yet to exist. The sun slowly rose above the horizon, brushing golden light across the surface of the Nile, making each ripple gleam like hammer bronze. To the ancient Egyptians, the river was not only the source of life, it was a god who could see, speak, and take away what was priceless. That day, as Ampu walked along the riverbank collecting clay, he noticed the water rising higher than in previous years, even though it was only the beginning of the season. The elders of the village whispered that Hapi, the god of floods, was sending a sign they did not yet understand. But the boy, with wide curious eyes, saw something else. This change carried a feeling that was both unsettling and full of expectation. Along the riverbank lay ancient mud brick tombs, leaning and sunken, remnants of generations washed away and then rebuilt by the waters. People often buried their loved ones near the river, believing that their souls would follow the Nile to the land of Osiris. But recently, these graves had been collapsing, the rising waters pulling them apart, leaving bones exposed under the sunlight, a harsh reminder that even death was no longer at peace. When Ampu bent down to patch up a small grave, he heard in the wind a faint lament, like a plea from disturbed spirits. That afternoon, the village held a ritual to pray for water. Women carried clay jars on their heads, forming long lines, while the priests stood before the statue of Hapi reciting ancient chants. But when the drums thundered through the open square, a flock of ibis suddenly soared overhead, chaotic and shrieking. The elders immediately knelt, for in their belief, the ibis was the bird of Thoth, the god of wisdom. Such disorder was never a good omen. The entire ritual became tense, and people exchanged fearful glances. Something is about to change. That night, Ampu could not sleep. He climbed onto the mud brick roof and gazed toward the desert, where dark dunes lay beneath the moonlight. In the distance, a thin green light flickered once before vanishing like the heartbeat of the earth. No one else saw it, only he did. And in that instant, he sensed something strange, as if someone were calling him from the far horizon, where kings were buried with gold, treasures, and sacred curses. The call, faint yet powerful, raising goosebumps on his skin, as though fate itself had begun to stir from beyond the visible world. The next morning, while Ampu was still troubled by the night's visions, the village chief gathered the people. He announced that a dangerous flood was approaching, and the village had to establish a new burial site, so that the souls of the dead would no longer be disturbed by the rising water. Few realized that this small decision on the banks of the Nile decision meant only to preserve tradition would become the first step that led humanity toward the idea of building structures unlike anything ever seen. Structures capable of defying floodwaters, time, and even death itself. At the back of the meeting, Wangpu stood silently. He did not understand why the green light he saw last night and the chief's announcement felt connected. But deep inside, he knew one thing for certain. His life and the lives of his people were about to enter an entirely new chapter. The sun stood at its zenith, casting harsh, blazing light across the lands along the Nile. The men of the village were reinforcing the clay and straw levee, while the women cleaned their homes in preparation for the rising waters. Only Wangpu remained haunted by the green flash he had seen over the desert the night before. He felt it wasn't just an illusion, it carried a call, a strange urge he couldn't explain. So when the village paused for its midday rest, he wandered toward the edge of the desert, where the dunes began to swallow the fertile soil. No one encouraged a child to go that far. The desert could kill a person with an ounce its heat tore at the throat, and its fine sand could swallow one's fate. But Wangpu felt no fear. Instead, he sensed a strange quiet, a feeling that he was walking towards something important, something he himself could not name. As he approached the largest dune, he drew in a deep breath. And in that moment, the air seemed to change. In the shimmering boundary, where sand and sky blurred under the heat, a figure was approaching. His steps were unlike the heavy trudging of villagers or the proud stride of warriors. They were so light they seemed to glide across the sand. His long deep red cloak rippled in the wind, and the staff he carried was carved with the head of a lion. In Wangpu's world, where people live with mud and water, no one dressed like this. As the stranger came closer, Wangpu instinctively stepped back. His face was partly covered by a cloth, revealing only a pair of sharp, blade-like eyes. Those eyes rested on Wangpu not with menace, but as if he had known the boy already, had expected him to stand here at this exact moment. "Boy," the stranger said, his voice low and rough like metal scraping in the desert wind. "You saw the light last night, didn't you?" Wangpu froze. He had told no one. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice as dry as the sand. The man smiled, not a warm smile, but the smile of someone holding a secret too immense to share. "I am the bearer of a message from the far west," he replied, "from the land where the sun dies each day and is reborn in the morning. I follow the signs of the gods, and the light you saw was their answer." Wangpu didn't understand, but he felt clearly. This man knew far more than anyone in his village. "What message is it?" he asked. The stranger tapped his staff into the sand. A soft spiral of wind rose around them, carrying the scent of ancient stone and sacred earth. "Your people live between two worlds," he said slowly. "Between water and sand, between life and death. You honor the souls of the dead, yet you let their resting places be torn away. You worship the gods, but you do not understand their will." Wangpu thought of the graves destroyed by the rising waters, the bones exposed beneath the sun. He bowed his head, uneasy, for it was the very fear haunting the entire village. "And the light," he pressed, "what does it mean?" The stranger looked toward the horizon, where the sun glimmered like a sea of metal. "It is the place where a great structure will rise," he said. "A structure untouched by flood, unbroken by wind, unafraid of time or death. A structure for the rulers of this river. A place where their souls will be safeguarded until the day of rebirth." Wangpu's eyes widened. "A tomb for the kings," he nodded. "But not just a tomb. It will be a gateway between heaven and earth," the boy swallowed. The idea was far beyond what a child living by manual labor could imagine. A place where souls could touch the sky, a structure that defied nature itself. As if reading his thoughts, the stranger smiled again. "Whether you believe or not does not matter," he said. "What matters is this: you were chosen to witness it. Chosen. Why me?" The man bent down and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Because in your eyes, I see something few possess. A curiosity that does not fear," he straightened. "But remember this: What I've told you cannot be spoken to anyone yet. If revealed too soon, the flow of fate will twist. Before Onpu could ask more, the desert wind suddenly roared. Sand surged in thick waves, blinding him within seconds. He shielded his face. When the sand settled, the stranger was gone as though he had never existed. Returning to the village, Onpu felt his mind heavy. Everything he looked at seemed different: the fragile levee, the low mud houses, the men struggling with shovels. He saw the smallness of humans before nature, and somewhere deep inside him, a part of the stranger's words began to take root. That night, Onpu lay still on his rooftop and gazed at the star-filled sky. Something stirred inside him: curiosity, excitement, and fear all at once. He wasn't sure whether to believe the stranger, but he knew one thing: from that moment on, he was no longer like the other children. He had glimpsed the future, even if only a small fragment of it. A future where a colossal structure would rise from the sands, bridging heaven and earth. And late that night, as he drifted into sleep, a faint green glow appeared again on the horizon. This time longer and clearer, like a confirmation that destiny had truly begun to move. On the morning after Onpu saw the green light again, the Egyptian sky was not bright red as usual, but covered by an unusually thick layer of clouds. The adults in the village exchanged uneasy glances the moment they saw it. The Nile, normally calm and steady like the breath of the god Hopi, was now roaring in waves, its questing waters twisting violently. No one spoke it aloud, but everyone knew this year's flood would not be normal. The children excitedly ran to the riverbank, but the adults quickly pulled them back. The wind carried the stench of mud and the chill of moisture, a detail that made the villagers shiver, for the Nile usually carried warmth when its waters rise. Before the sun had fully climbed the sky, the village chief summoned everyone, his voice grave. The water will rise faster than we expect. We must move our livestock and food to the high storage huts. In the crowd, Onpu stood close beside his mother. He felt her hand tremble. The Egyptians had lived with floods for generations, but even she, who had enjoyed more seasons of rising water than anyone else, had never trembled like this. By noon, what the villagers feared became reality. The flood arrived like a pack of wild beasts. The dark water surged with such force that trees were uprooted, and large stones were swept away as though they were dry leaves. The villagers ran toward higher ground, dragging baskets of grain, sacks of barley, and small ceramic figurines they believed would protect their families from the wrath of the gods. Onpu helped his mother tie down their roof with thick ropes, but when he saw the water reaching the low palm trees before the village, his heart tightened. He had seen floods before, but never had the water risen with such terrifying speed. In just hours, the entire riverbank turned into a swirling sea of mud. Grazing pastures sank beneath the torrent. Cries for help echoed from the home closest to the river. Part of its roof had been torn away by the wind. Two men rushed to help, but were nearly swept away themselves. Everything happened in chaos and desperation, as though the gods had turned their backs on mankind. Onpu stood there, heart heavy as he watched. He remembered the stranger in the desert, the one who spoke of balance between two worlds. Was this the god's warning, or the beginning of something greater? When night fell, the flood still had not stopped. The villagers gathered on the high mound, where they built temporary shelters out of dry grass and cloth. Oil lamps, set in seashells or clay bowls, flickered like fireflies amid the mud. A cold wind blew in from the river, and children's cries filled the air. The village chief stood before them, his voice hoarse. "We cannot continue living like this. If the Nile keeps changing as it has this year, we must find a way to build a higher place of shelter. A place where the waters cannot reach the souls of the dead." The crowd fell into an eerie silence. The idea of building a higher place seemed far beyond the ability of these farmers. They could dig canals, build earthen walls, raise levees, but a structure truly tall and strong, such a thing had never existed in their imagination. But in that silence, Onpu clearly heard the wind passing through cracks in the rocks, carrying a sound that resembled a whisper. He shivered. That familiar feeling returned, the sense that someone was watching him from afar. From the desert, from where the green light had come. At midnight, the water finally began to recede, slowly. But even as it withdrew, it left behind devastation. Wooden beams floated through the mud, homes collapsed, and fields lay buried beneath thick silt. Worst of all, the clay graveyard near the riverbank had vanished entirely. When the villagers went to inspect the site with torches, they found white bones exposed on the cold, wet ground. The ceramic bowls buried with the dead had shattered. Even the strongest men felt their hair rise at the sight. An old woman burst into tears. Where will their souls go now? They will be dragged into the darkness. No one answered, because everyone knew she was right. In ancient Egyptian belief, the soul needed an intact body and a safe resting place in order to enter the afterlife. Losing a grave meant losing the soul's path forward, trapping it between worlds, turning it into what the Egyptians feared most, the wandering spirit. The next morning, as the sun cast a faint golden glow over the dunes, the villagers gathered to decide what to do. The village chief looked around and said, "We must build a new burial place, but this time, not near the river." A man protested, "If not near the river, then where? The desert will swallow us whole." The chief frowned, "If the desert wants to swallow, then we will build something it cannot swallow." In the crowd, Wampu felt his heart pounding. These words sounded like echoes from his mysterious encounter in the desert. Did the chief say them out of intuition? Or was something greater and unseen force guiding human thought towards something monumental? He looked toward the desert. And this time, in broad daylight, he saw it, a thin streak of green sliding across the horizon before fading. Only he saw it. Wampu's chest tightened. He understood. The moment the stranger foretold was drawing closer with each passing day. The flood was only the beginning. Something enormous awaited humanity in the desert, a calling that could not be escaped. After 3 days and 3 nights of raging floods, the villagers began cleaning up whatever was left. Dry mud covered the fields that once grew lush, healthy rice. The mud brick walls were cracked. Some roofs had collapsed halfway, others washed away completely. Everywhere carried the smell of damp rotting wood, the stench of mud, and the smoky scent from the small fires villagers used to dry their clothes. Wampu walked with his mother, picking up items the water had pushed far from their home. His mother's small clay jar had miraculously survived intact. But the more precious things, protective figurines, the braided palm fiber bracelets that sat on the family altar, were gone. His mother sighed. Her eyes red. "We're lucky to be alive," she said, as if reassuring herself more than him. But inside Wampu, it no longer felt like luck. This year's flood seemed like a warning, one from something far greater and more powerful than any simple riverbank folk could comprehend. That evening, the villagers gathered around a large fire. It was the ritual they always held after a natural disaster, a prayer to Hopi and Osiris for peace. But tonight, no one felt peaceful. The priests shook their sistrums, each metallic ring echoing like waves. Yet the sound couldn't drown the heavy unease. Even a village chief, a man as steady as the rock by the Nile, wore a face that seemed burdened by a mountain. In the firelight, he looked at everyone and said, "The gods are sending signs, not just the flood, not just the bones emerging." He drew a long breath. "We must build a resting place for the departed, a place higher than all waters, stronger than all winds." Someone in the crowd trembled. A woman whispered, "Build in the desert. The desert belongs to death." The village chief stared directly into the eyes of his people. "That is precisely why it can keep the souls safe." His words silenced the entire gathering. For the first time, someone in the village dared to think of defying nature by rising above it. After the ritual, when everyone returned to their makeshift tents, Wampu stayed beside the fire. Its flames felt as if they were whispering to him. The flickering light across his face reminded him of the stranger's words in the desert. "You are chosen to witness." Witness what? Wampu still didn't know. But he sensed that nothing happening these days was accidental. He looked into the darkness. Wind from the desert swept in, scattering fine sand across his skin. And then from afar, a faint blue light flickered in the night sky. Small, but sharp enough to make his heart race. No one else saw it. No one else heard the breath-like calling, only him. The next morning, the village chief summoned the strongest man. "We will enter the desert," he declared. "We must find high ground, firmer than touched by the floods. That will be the place for the new burial site." A group of more than 30 set out carrying water, flatbread, and crude tools. Wangpu came running, breathless. "Let me go too." His mother turned pale. "No. The desert is no place for a child." But the chief stared at Wangpu for a long moment. His eyes held something strange, like he saw in the boy something Wangpu himself did not know. "I want the child to come," he said. The man murmured in surprise, and Wangpu's mother protested fiercely. But the chief simply said, "Sometimes the gods choose their own, even when mortals do not understand." And so Wangpu joined the journey into the desert. The morning desert stretched out like an endless golden sea. The sun burned even before the sun rose high. Wind swept hard, sending grains of sand stinging across faces like needles. But Wangpu wasn't afraid. Something unseen was guiding him. The group walked all morning, finding no suitable place. But near noon, Wangpu suddenly stopped, staring toward a tall triangular dome. "There," he whispered. "We have to go there." Some men frowned. What nonsense is the boy talking about? But the chief felt a chill down his spine. He stared at the dome, its shape. Too straight, too symmetrical, almost as if crafted by ancient hands. "Go there," he commanded. When they reached the top, everyone fell silent. Beneath a thin layer of sand was solid stone, broad, flat, and impossibly large. When tapped, it echoed like sacred rock. This isn't natural," one man said, his voice trembling. The chief knelt and placed his hand on the stone. "This is where the gods have directed us," he said. "The place where the home of souls must be built." Wangpu stood on the dune's crest, wind whipping across his face. He felt the lingering echo of last night's blue light. Suddenly, a whisper seeped through the stone, as if wind flowing through a hidden crack. "This place will touch the sky." A shiver ran through him. Maybe it was only the wind, or maybe the voice of the gods. Below him, the massive stone slab lay in silence, like a sleeping heart awaiting its awakening. The villagers exchanged looks filled with fear and excitement. They were standing at the threshold of something far greater than themselves. And in that moment, though none of them knew it, history opened a new path. A path of monuments that would endure for thousands of years. A path leading to the birth of the pyramid. On the morning the group returned from the desert, the entire village seemed to awaken from its fear. Not because the floods had passed, but because of the news the village chief brought back. "We have found the place the gods have chosen." The message spread faster than the wind, a shout of light piercing through the heavy clouds of chaos that had hung over them for days. The villagers gathered around the great fire in the center of the village. Their eyes still carried the exhaustion of nights spent fighting the flood, yet within them burned something new hope. Hope that they would no longer see the bones of their ancestors swept away by water. Hope that this time, they could build something that stood above the terror of nature. The village chief stood in a circle, his clay-colored cloak faded from days under the sun. His voice rang clear. "The stone foundation in the desert is no coincidence. It is a calling. And it will be the place where we build the home of spirits." But not everyone agreed. Several men stood and protested. "The desert kills. How can we survive long enough out there to build anything? A foundation of stone means nothing. The sand will swallow us whole. This is work for the royal craftsmen, for the pharaoh. We are common people. We are not worthy to build the resting place of kings and gods." Murmurs rose like waves, but the chief lifted his hand. When silence finally settled, he said, "It is not what we want. It is what the gods have chosen." His words carried the weight of earth and sky. The crowd fell still. At that moment, Wangpu, standing toward the back, felt a thin chill brush the back of his neck like an unseen gaze watching every moment unfold. In the days that followed, the villagers were divided into groups. Some cleaned the flood debris, others rebuilt temporary homes, others gathered whatever wood and stone could still be used. But while most were busy with their usual work, a small group was secretly assigned to return to the desert foundation with the village chief for further investigation. Wangpu was allowed to accompany them every time, which surprised many. A child walking with the strongest men, such a thing had never happened. But the chief always said, "This boy sees what we do not." And he was right. On the second trip, as they stood upon the vast, flat stone, Wangpu felt a faint tremor beneath his feet. Not an earthquake, not the wind. It felt like the heartbeat of some colossal being sleeping beneath the stone, now stirring gently. Did anyone feel that?" he asked. The men shook their heads. Only Wangpu heard it, sensed it, and knew it. The desert was waking. The sand was not just sand. The stone was not just stone. Everything felt connected by an invisible thread. On their way back, the group passed through a low dip in the sand. A strong gust swept across, blowing away the thin upper layer of sand to reveal a carved stone slab. Everyone froze. It was an enormous triangle carved into the rock, filled with symbols that even the chief had never seen. The men touched it, its surface cold as winter stone despite the blazing desert sun. "Must be divine influence," one man whispered. "No," the chief murmured. "This was buried long ago. It did not appear on its own." Wangpu stared at the triangle. In that moment, he heard the familiar whisper once more, like wind slipping through a rock crevice, like the wings of an ancient creature beating in the dark. "Three sides, three realms," the whisper echoed softly. "Heaven, earth, and the soul." A shiver ran down his spine. The tomb now, the structure they were meant to build, was not merely a burial place. It was a gateway. That evening, the villagers gathered again. The chief laid out the carved stone they brought back. People crowded around it, confused, frightened, fascinated. "This is a sign," the chief said. "The gods want us to build according to this shape." A young man spoke up, hesitant. "You mean build a mountain of stone?" "Not a mountain," the chief replied. "A perfect triangle, stronger than mud brick, tall enough to touch the light of rock." The villagers gasped. An old woman trembled. "That is a pyramid." No one in the village knew the word, yet they all understood its meaning. A structure rising like an upright triangle. A monument thrust upward, as if aiming for the top of the world. Before anyone could react further, a sudden violent gust swept through the village square. The fire surged upward, exploding into a towering flame higher than a man's head. Its color shifted into a pale, ghostly blue, the exact same hue only Wangpu had seen before. The villagers screamed. Some stumbled back. Others fell to their knees, believing this was divine wrath. But Wangpu's eyes widened. This was not wrath. This was a summons. Within the blue flame, a shadowy form emerged. Not human, not beast, something like a colossal spirit drifting above the ground. The wind roared like a beating drum. "You have been chosen." And then the flame died instantly. The village square fell silent. No one dared breathe loudly. Only the chief spoke. "Tomorrow we begin." That night, as the villagers slept in a mix of fear and awe, Wangpu sat alone under the moonlight. He thought of the stranger in the desert, of the triangular stone slab, of the blue flame, of the voice of the spirit. And deep within, he understood. He was not merely a witness. He was part of the destiny itself. The desert wind rose once more, carrying a whispered call, "Come to me tomorrow." In that moment, Wangpu knew the journey to create the pyramid, a monument that would defy time, had truly begun. The desert wind rose again as Kalane's expedition left the last fertile lowland and pushed deeper into the endless sea of sand. Dawn had barely broken. The first rays of sunlight were still veiled behind thin streaks of cloud stretching across the horizon. Yet the desert was far from silent. It emitted a deep, rumbling sound, as though it were breathing, shifting beneath the infinite blanket of golden sand. Kalane rode at the front on his camel, eyes fixed on the faded map he had retrieved from the temple archives. Its markings were vague, mostly geometric symbols and ancient lines of text nearly impossible to read. But every account, every fragment of scripture, pointed toward a place hidden within the black desert region where golden sands turned to ash gray, and the ground bore marks of an event that did not belong to the world of mortals. Behind him, the elderly couple and the workers kept silent. And they relaxed. Their footprints stretched behind them in long trails across the sand, yet even a few gusts of wind were enough to erase every trace. It felt as though the desert refused to remember that they had passed through. A crisp Kiara cracked beneath the camel's foot, and the entire group halted. Kalaim leaned down. Beneath the sand was a layer of darker earth solid, as if melted and hardened by fire. "Here it is," he whispered. The old man behind him looked down, his face draining of color. "The black desert," he murmured with dread. "This place isn't shaped by nature." The ancient said. Something fell from the sky. Kalaim didn't answer. He had suspected this long ago. But seeing it with his own eyes froze him in place. Blackened sand stretched far into the distance, mottled like cooled magma flies. Scattered among it were stones with unnatural forms smeared like glass on one side, rough like dragon scales on the other. He knelt and picked up a shard. Under the sunlight, it reflected a faint blue glow, cold and otherworldly. "This is not natural stone." The night before, the group had heard tales of the day the sun fell to earth, a story villagers dismissed as myth. But here, now, the myth stood before them solid, real, undeniable. Kalaim tucked the shard into his pouch and stepped forward. "We continue. We're only one day from our destination." The tremor lasted only seconds, but then, ahead of them, the earth split in a thin crack. From the fissure seeped the same pale blue light as the shard he had picked up, shimmering, eerie, alive. The group instinctively stepped back. Kalaim walked forward, ignoring their fear. "This is the same light mentioned in the ancient texts. This is the source of energy our ancestors spoke of." The old man trembled. "Are you certain we should go on?" "Things not of this world, they bring calamity." Kalaim turned, gaze unshakable. "Precisely because it is not of this world. We must uncover it. This is the key to ending the Flag chaos. If we don't, Egypt will fall." No one argued further. They simply followed. By noon, they reached a wider expanse where the black sand had been compressed into flat, layered surfaces like the foundation of a colossal structure erased by time. The wind still blew, but here the silence was unnerving, so quiet they could hear their own lungs expand and contract. Kalaim suddenly stopped. Before them rose a massive triangular block jutting out of the earth. Not a pyramid, just the very apex of something buried beneath the sand. The same blue light from the quiet now pulsed faintly along its surface. Strange symbols, neither Egyptian nor resembling any script Kalaim had seen, ran along its edges like dim, breathing veins. The worker cried out, "By the gods." "Did the gods build this?" Kalaim didn't answer. He stepped closer and placed his hand on the stone. The instant his fingers touched it, the blue light flared violently. The entire black desert shook once more. A deep sound rumbled from below like something colossal awakening. The workers stumbled back in terror. "Kalaim, move!" But Kalaim stood frozen, eyes wide. In that moment, he understood, not logically, but instinctively. This stone was not built. It fell. It fell from the sky. Not a monument, but the broken remains of something that once burned through the heavens. This was the origin of every legend, and the blue energy flowing within the stone was the same force ancient Egypt had harnessed to build structures far beyond their time, the pyramids. Kalaim collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed. So this is it. The foundation of everything we thought we knew. The desert wind howled like the whispered voices of millennia. And Kalaim knew that the path ahead would no longer be a simple expedition. It was the doorway to a buried truth, one that could change the fate of Egypt forever. Dust still floated in the air as the blue light slowly withdrew into the thin cracks along the surface of the massive stone block. The group of workers stood several paces away, their eyes still wide with shock. Only Kalaim remained kneeling beside the stone, his palms numb from the aftershock of the energy that had surged through it. In that heavy silence, a strange sound began to rise, not loud, not clear, but steady, like a heartbeat echoing from some unreachable distance. With every pulse, the ground trembled ever so slightly. The black sands beneath Kalaim shifted as though pulled by an unseen force. The old man whispered, trembling, "Kalaim, step back. This thing. It was never meant for humans." But Kalaim did not hear him. Something else was flooding his mind. Not a voice, but an intrusion, as if someone were projecting memories directly into his thoughts. And he saw a night sky blazing with light. A colossal object, long like a serpent, plunging from the heavens, wrapped in fire. Strange symbols glowing and flowing along its surface. Then, a blinding white explosion, the desert torn apart. Golden earth turning to ash, becoming the black desert of today. And at the epicenter of the blast, this triangular structure lying half buried beneath the sand. Kalaim's eyes flew open, cold sweat running down his back. He understood. What he saw were the memories of that object. It was not stone, not metal, not anything born of this earth. He rose to his feet, backing away, but unable to take his eyes off the block. Suddenly, a sharp click echoed. One of the glowing symbols on the monolith shifted. Not the light, the symbol itself slid across the stone surface, as though a puzzle piece were slipping into its proper place. Then another, and another, then dozens more began rearranging themselves. A young worker screamed, "Ah, it's alive." The old man stumbled back, gripping his staff, not alive awakening. Kalaim steadied his breath, watching intently. The symbols moved with perfect precision, aligning as if reorganizing vast amounts of information. Moments later, they stopped, then blazed bright, forming a straight vertical line across the stone. That line opened, not splitting the stone, but revealing a hidden layer of light beneath it. A three-dimensional projection of blue light emerged, hovering in the air before them. It rotated slowly. It had sharp angles. It was a pyramid, perfect, flawless in proportion, unlike anything built in any Egyptian dynasty. Kalaim whispered, This is a blueprint." The old man breathed in disbelief. A blueprint of a divine structure. Kalaim shook his head. Not divine, something older. A civilization that no longer exists. He reached out and touched the floating image. Immediately, 3 beams of light shot from the holographic pyramid down to the ground, forming 3 equidistant points around the monolith. The points flickered, then revealed 3 new symbols. Kalaim read them slowly, deciphering their strange structure: energy, foundation, axis. The worker whispered, "What does it mean, sir?" Kalaim exhaled deeply. "It's showing us how to build a pyramid." The entire group froze, but the moment the words left his mouth, the wind shifted violently. Cold air swept across their backs. The sky darkened, as though an enormous veil had passed over the sun. Black sand began swirling in circular patterns around the stone. From beneath the ground, tiny blue sparks flickered upward, like fragments of raw energy escaping a system pushed beyond its limit. The old man shouted, "Kalaim, it's activating something." Kalaim scanned the area, not opening, activating. The monolith was waking something buried even deeper, deeper than itself. The monolith was waking something buried even deeper, deeper than itself. Far in the distance, the earth cracked open. A streak of blue light shot into the sky and vanished instantly. Then came a deep, resonant boom, like a drum struck by the heart of the desert. The workers panicked. "We have to run." But Kalaim roared, "Don't move. If you run, the sun will swallow you." He looked at the 3 symbols glowing beneath his feet. They were not just symbols. They were activation markers, a primitive form of code, triggered only when someone understood them. And by deciphering them, Kalaim had told the object one thing: it was now being used. Without warning, the ground in front of the monolith collapsed. Sand poured downward like a waterfall, revealing a massive hollow space hidden for millennia. Kalaim stared down, heart pounding. Below them lay a giant circular stone door, shaped like a great spinning mechanism. Its concentric rings resembled the Egyptian sun disk, yet its construction was unfamiliar, too precise, too alien. Across the door, The same blue symbols flowed in a loop, glowing with rhythmic pulses. The oldest worker whispered, "How long has this thing been sleeping?" Kalaim stepped to the edge, the wind whipping his clothes. "Thousands of years, maybe older than the first dynasty." A chilling realization formed in his mind. This was the source the ancients had discovered, the power that allowed the earliest pyramids to rise. Not a divine gift, but the remnants of another world. The old man swallowed hard. Kalaim drew open it. Kalaim gazed down at the door. Its glowing rhythm matched perfectly with the floating pyramid model. He understood instantly. The monolith was the key. The door was the entrance, and beneath it lay the greatest secret in Egypt's history. Kalaim clenched his fists. "We open it!" The desert wind screamed like a warning from the gods. But it was too late. Everything had already begun, and nothing could stop it now. A violent gust roared past, whipping sand and mud into a massive spiraling vortex. The sun vanished behind thin sheets of black cloud, plunging the black desert into a half-gold, half-violet glow like the final warning before a storm. The entire group stood frozen, eyes fixed on the enormous circular door newly exposed beneath the collapsing sand. Kalaim was the first to descend toward the edge of the pit, not because he was the bravest, but because he was the only one who understood that everything had already begun the moment he touched the monolith. Running now would only cause the ancient mechanism to treat them as intruders. The only path left to survive was forward. He knelt, letting his eyes trace the spiraling rings carved into the stone door. The blue symbols moved in perfect circles, not fast, not slow, as though waiting for something to complete their pattern. The old man gripped his staff, voice trembling as he stood at the rim of the pit. "Kalaim, are you certain? What if this place was never meant for mortal feats?" Kalaim answered without turning. "If the ancients built their pyramids from the secrets of this place, then someone must have descended here before," the worker whispered to the old man. "But did they ever return?" Silence fell instantly. No one knew the answer. Kalaim placed his hand into a deep groove along the surface of the door. Immediately, the blue symbols contracted, then flared brightly as if reacting to his presence. The door vibrated. The spiraling rings began to shift. "Back away!" Kalaim shouted. The group scrambled up the edge, leaving him alone at the center. A deep metallic hum rose from far beneath the earth, not the sound of stone, but of ancient bronze machinery the size of a temple awakening. The spirals turned, slowly peeling apart like petals unfurling. A young worker whispered, It's opening." Kalaim nodded, but his eyes were wide. The door did not rotate on a hinge. It slid aside, drifting as if suspended on air rather than touching the ground. What lay beneath was not a pit, not a tunnel, not a ruined chamber, but a perfectly straight corridor stretching into infinity, lit faintly by the blue glow of ancient energy. The entire group held their breath. The cold draft swept out from the corridor, carrying the faint scent of silver metal and something impossible to name, like the smell of night sky mixed with frozen stone. Kalaim stood at the threshold, staring into the endless passageway whose end could not be seen. The walls were smooth, white, and glossy like polished ivory. No Egyptian carvings, no hieroglyphs, no symbols from any civilization known to humankind. The old man's voice cracked. This was truly built by the ancients. Kalaim shook his head. "No, this is where the ancients found something." The worker bit his lip. If it wasn't made by humans, then what was inside? Kalaim didn't answer. Instead, he stepped in. The moment his foot touched the floor, glowing lines awakened beneath him, spreading forward in a path that illuminated with each footstep, guiding him deeper. The workers exchanged fearful glances. Then, hesitantly, they followed him inside. Inside the corridor, the air was utterly still, so still that every breath echoed like a whisper in a vast cathedral. Kalaim walked slowly, brushing his fingers along the wall. It was polished, smooth, and cold, like stone refined by techniques far beyond human capability. A tiny swirl of light appeared exactly where he touched, not etched, not protruding, but blooming from within the surface. The old man gasped. "The wall. It reacts to you." Kalaim remained calm. "Not to me, to movement." He stepped quickly. Nothing changed. He touched the wall again. The swirl reappeared. It listened through contact, as if the corridor had been built to monitor every being that walked inside. A creeping sense of being watched settled over all of them. After nearly 15 minutes, the corridor suddenly opened into a vast space. A perfectly spherical chamber, towering dozens of meters high. Every surface was made of translucent white material that caught the blue energy light and reflected it like glowing ice. But the architecture was not what seized their breath. Floating at the exact center of the room, a massive cube, as large as two men standing on each other's shoulders, suspended in midair by no visible force, rotating slowly in perfect silence. Each side of the cube was covered in blue symbols, the same style as the monolith in the desert, but more intricate, more alive. The old man choked out. What is that?" Clem stepped closer. The energy radiating from the cube pulsed, each symbol flickering as though recognizing the presence of newcomers. The symbols began to rearrange, faster, more vividly. Clem whispered, his lips trembling. "It's a memory core." The young worker flinched. "You mean like a library?" "No, something far greater." Clem's heartbeat hammered in his ears as he spoke. "This contains the knowledge of an entire civilization." At that moment, the cube ceased rotating. A surge of blue light burst outward like lightning, washing over the group, painless, but stealing a heartbeat from every chest. Then the cube spun, not with sound, not with vibration, but directly into their minds. Deep, resonant, ancient. And unmistakably non-human. "Heir of the light, you have finally returned." The group froze. Clem's body went rigid. The voice echoed again, clearer. "The door has been opened, and now our memory shall awaken." The cube blazed with brilliant blue light. The entire spherical chamber trembled. Swirls of light erupted across the walls like veins, coming alive after millennia of sleep. Clem inhaled sharply. "Everyone, hold on to the walls. It's about true." A blast of energy detonated from the center. White light swallowed everything. White light, bright as the fire of the sun, crashed down into the heart of the chamber. It did not burn. Instead, it dissolved the world into blurred streaks, as if everything was being erased and rewritten with new strokes. Clem felt himself being pulled out of his body. He was no longer standing in the spherical chamber. He was drifting through a boundless expanse with no walls, no floor, no air, only light. And from that light, images began to form. Not normal images, memories, not of humans, but of the object that had fallen from the sky. Clem saw a deep blue planet, similar to Earth, yet its landscape was utterly foreign. No yellow desert, no pyramids, no Nile, but towering metallic structures of gleaming silver rising like pillars that held the heavens. Across the night sky, streaks of light curved like burning ships gliding through the air. Then came the explosion. One of the fiery ships veered sharply, spiraling as if it had lost control. A burst of blue light flared from its tail, and the entire vessel ignited. It plunged into the atmosphere, leaving a colossal trail of fire. Clem understood instantly. This was the same vessel whose fragment they had found buried beneath the Black Desert. In its final moment, he heard a voice, not spoken, but thought, "We must not let our knowledge be lost." Then the fire slammed into the ground. The earth tore apart, golden sand erupted. A section of the Black Desert was born at that very moment. The vessel shattered, and its memory chamber fell deepest, becoming the very room they had been standing in when the light engulfed them. The vision blurred, shifting to another era. Primitive humans, bronze-skinned, loincloth-clad, eyes dark and piercing, approached the smoking crater with trembling steps. They had no explanation for what they saw. All they knew was that the night sky had exploded, and a mountain of fire had fallen to the earth. A man stood at the front, broad-shouldered, strong, with a triangular stone pendant around his neck. He reached out to touch the glowing crack of the fallen object, where faint azure light still pulsed. Instantly, the light flowed up his arm. He did not burn. He was not harmed. Instead, he heard a voice, "Chosen one. You are the first of this earth who can understand us." Clem's breath caught in his chest. This man, he knew the name, a name shrouded in myth, recorded only in cryptic symbols in ancient Egyptian texts. Mentara, revered as the origin of sacred geometry. The man later praised as the first ruler to understand the language of the sky. The next vision struck Kalaim like a blow. Mentara and his people stood before a massive projected model, not of clay, but of glowing blue light, identical to the holographic model Kalaim had seen. Symbols rotated around it. 3 beams marked 3 points on the ground, forming a perfect equilateral triangle. Kalaim recognized them instantly. The first blueprint of the pyramids, but it was more than architecture. The model displayed weight distribution, stellar alignment, the central energy channel, a structural system designed to endure millennia without collapse. The pyramids were not merely tombs, not temples, not monuments of power. They were energy conduits for the fallen object, devices to stabilize the land's energy and regulate the Nile's floods. Humanity had not invented these concepts. They were guided, not by gods, but by relics of a civilization from the sky. The scene darkened. Mentara had aged. His face was gaunt, his eyes heavy yet resolute. The memory cube flickered like a dying flame, its symbols unstable. Even a great civilization like the Fallen One could not persist forever. Its core energy was failing. If it depleted entirely, the black desert would collapse inward, releasing a surge capable of burning the entire region. Mentara gave his final decree. We must seal this place, preserve the knowledge, but it must never be used recklessly. Kalaim watched as they sealed the chamber and placed the cube into its dormant state. The 3 triangular points across the desert were marked, the foundations of the first pyramids. Then the vision faded, only soft blue light remained. The same deep voice echoed, the one that had greeted them. Bearer of wisdom, if you hear this, earth faces upheaval once more. The waters will rage, the desert will swallow, the sky will darken. You must restore the energy triangle. If not, Egypt will fall into eternal shadow. Kalaim clenched his fists, his chest tightened. The ancient texts had said that this year's floods would be unnatural. It wasn't nature, it was a warning. The voice continued, the first pyramid has shifted from its axis. You are the one destined to correct it. The light vanished. Kalaim collapsed to his knees, gasping. He returned to the spherical chamber. His companions lay scattered on the floor, dazed but unharmed. The cube floated in silence again, as if asleep. Kalaim rose, his eyes burned with newfound purpose. He understood why he had been brought here. Not to learn, not to witness history, but to fulfill a single mission. Restore the energy triangle, the true foundation of the pyramids. Kalaim led the survey team to the 40th sand dune, the place marked on the ancient stone tablet. When they dug down, they discovered a cold stone slab buried beneath the scorching desert. As they lifted it, a deep well glowing blue emerged from the darkness. Inside the well, symbols floated and rotated marks of the first builders, a civilization older than Egypt itself. The symbols converged into the shape of a glowing pyramid, and a voice echoed in Kalaim's mind, build the road to the sky. Kalaim realized that the calling he had felt all his life came from this very place. The pharaoh ordered all of Egypt to focus its strength on constructing a massive structure around the ancient well. The higher the construction rose, the stronger the light beneath the ground became, as if something long dormant was being awakened. Workers suffered sleepless nights. Priests began to see visions, and Kalaim constantly heard a guiding voice. He finally understood the pyramid was not a tomb, but a giant transmission device left behind by the first builders. On the final night, when the capstone was set in place, the well flashed one last time, and then went dark, its purpose seemingly fulfilled. On the night of the inauguration, the stars in the sky shifted, aligning perfectly with the pyramid. A beam of light descended from the heavens and touched the apex of the structure. No one saw it except Kalaim, the chosen one. The wind carried a whisper. The signal has been sent. They will know we are still alive. Kalaim understood. The pyramid was humanity's message to the ancient beings who once visited. When the pharaoh asked what the pyramid truly was, Kalam simply replied. A response to a very old promise. The camera pulls back. The pyramid stands silent under the moonlight, as if waiting for the first builders to return. The story comes to an end here. Thank you for journeying with Sleep Lab. Free the golden sands of Egypt and the ancient mysteries hidden beneath them. Now let the space around you soften. Let your breathing slow. Let your entire body sink into ease. All the worries of today can stay behind. You've done enough. You deserve rest. Wishing you a peaceful night, a deep, gentle sleep, and the most beautiful dreams. Sleep Lab wish you good night.